Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. Today we have an author and an artist, an illustrator of all these children's books, and it is really terrific. His name is Ralph Masiello. Welcome, Ralph.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks for inviting me.
Did you come in? You went to RISD, Rhode Island School of Design.
I did.
I was reading your bio.
Yeah.
I have a friend who went there. I don't know when she graduated. When were you there?
I was actually a transfer student. I went to school for marine biology before I went to RISD. Yeah. And so I started there in '83 as a transfer, and I graduated in '85. I had some great teachers. I had Chris Van Allsburg, who did the Polar Express, and Jumanji, and Zathura. So he was one of the drawing teachers there, and David McCauley, who did books like Castle, Cathedral, Pyramid, Black and White, which that's a Caldecott book. So I had some really great teachers. At the time, I didn't know they were these famous people. Yeah. They were my teachers, but stellar place to go to school.
Yeah, I wish I'd gone there. I went to Plymouth State up in New Hampshire, majored in art, but I got so bored. I don't know, it just didn't get me. I remember I lived in Providence for a while in the 80s, and I think the college was offering a very low price sculpting or whatever it is, the clay thing. And so my friend who had graduated from there, she came with me. And I remember that very well. It was a lot of fun.
I loved RISD.
Oh, it was great. RISD, it's right up there near Brown, right?
Yeah. In fact, you can take courses at Brown, and Brown students can take courses at Rhode Island School of Design as well.
Did you graduate from RISD?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, that's what year did you graduate?
I graduated in 1985.
There you go. Yeah, that's good. So from there, what did you do?
I was illustrating professionally before I even left school.
There you go. That's great.
I was one of those people that did not want to go out into the world and not be ready. Yeah. So I prepared myself before I left school. Yeah. I sent out packets of information to publishers all over the United States, mostly in New York. And in that package, I'd have a query letter explaining who I was and why I'd be a good person to work with. Kind of lied about that. I wrote, I appreciate any comments, criticisms, or suggestions you could give me. And I enclosed a self-addressed stamped envelope so they could send me some information back. I put my resume in there.
Did they get back to you?
Well, I sent out 250. And out of the 250 that I sent out, normally you get like 5% return. Yeah. I got 105 returns. Good. Because I followed up on them every week. I'd say, "Did you get my package?" I'd call them on the phone. They got a little annoyed with me, some of the publishers, but I never took no for an answer. No. And that's one of the things I teach kids when I speak to college students or even high school students about art as a business, that you have to be your own promoter because nobody else is going to promote you.
Exactly. There's so many different styles of art. I do abstract, just fun, funky. Jackson Pollock, remember the paint thrower?
Oh, absolutely.
I like his. I don't do what he does, but I love that whole idea. When I was in college, I was a freshman, and my art professor put a table, or I don't know what it was, a plant or a chair up on a table, and she said to us, "Draw that."
Yeah, that was my first class too.
All right. So what happens is I thought, I'm not into detail particularly, unless it's my abstract. I don't care about what she's just put up there. So I just did it in my way. I got the idea across, and I looked at the other kids. I'm like, oh. So she came over to me, and she said, "Is there anything wrong with your eyes?" That did it. Dropped her like a hot potato. Yeah. You don't say that to her. No, her approach should have been, "That's an interesting take on it, Jan. Let's try this." But she...
That reminds me of the book, The Dot. Have you seen the book The Dot by Peter Reynolds? It's basically the story of a little, and it's one of the best children's books about art. Yeah. Books about art. It's about a little girl who's in school, and our teacher wants her to paint something, and she doesn't know what to paint, so she just makes a big splat in the middle of, like a dot in the middle of the paper. Yeah. And she figures that, well, that's it. Yeah. But then the art teacher has it framed and asks her to do more. And it turns out that everybody wanted these dots.
Yeah.
And that book actually turned into like a series of different types of books like that.
When did it come out? Sounds familiar.
Probably 10, 12 years ago, the dot came out.
I don't know if my son would have read it. He might have been too old.
It's a little book about this big.
Yeah.
And Peter Reynolds actually has a bookstore in, I think in Dedham, Blue Bunny Bookstore.
In Dedham. Blue Bunny.
Blue Bunny, that's Peter Reynolds' bookstore.
Is that, that's one, is that for children only?
No, it's
For
adults.
everyone, okay.
It's got a coffee shop in there, too.
Well,
It's
you're
really
from
nice.
Rhode Island, right? You're in Rhode Island.
I live in Charlton, Mass.
You're in Charlton. Okay.
Yeah.
I've
I
been
was
to-
living in Connecticut for a little bit, but now I live in Charlton. I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm a Massachusetts guy.
My grandfather and his family migrated from Nova Scotia to Charlton. Now you talk about late 1800s or 1900s. And my great-grandfather built the first house there that had indoor plumbing. And it still is there. I've given a speech at your beautiful library there.
Oh, it's gorgeous. The stained glass and the library in Charlton is
Oh, yeah.
absolutely unbelievable.
I wanted to borrow a book of this.
The man that does the stained glass, he's still alive. He's in his late 80s, I believe, and he's still doing stained
Just a
glass.
kid.
It's beautiful. I suggest if anybody that's watching wants to, and is in the Charlton area, check out the library.
Oh,
check
definitely.
out the
I tried to check
stained
out a book
glass.
there, and she told me
Beautiful.
no because you're not in the system. I
It's
said,
in the system.
oh, we're C.W. Mars out this region.
Yeah, she's not C.W. Mars there?
No, well, at least she wasn't there about 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh,
I was disappointed. I said,
surprised.
oh, I want that book. All right, so we're talking with Ralph Masiello, and he is not only the designer of these, drawing these, but he also wrote it. Now, the first one, you see, which one did you want to talk about? But they both look terrific. Which
Okay,
one?
well, let me tell you about the Grimmel, the Fantastic Fruits book there,
Yeah.
which is the big square book. That book came out just about the time the pandemic hit, and unfortunately, I didn't get to promote it the way I wanted to. But that book is very interesting. It is an adult or kid coloring book.
Yeah.
About rare tropical fruit, but the story about the grove is what's interesting. I was contacted by a family in Key West, Florida, about doing a book about this grove, and I kept saying to them, I don't want to do pictures of fruit. It doesn't sound that exciting. They said, well, let's fly you down. So they flew me down in January. Okay, fly me down to Key West in January. I fly down, they take me to this grove, and immediately I was sold on the place. This guy, Adolf Grimmel. What a
Well,
name.
there's a great first
What a
name.
name, right? This is a true story. Adolf Grimmel was an engineer, not railroad, but a mechanical engineer in Michigan in the 1950s, and he quit his job to do underwater photography for NASA around the Florida Keys. And while he was there, he got interested in rare tropical fruit for some reason. So he bought 2.5 acres of land on this little island called Big Pine Key, which is about 20 minutes east of Key West. Now, the Keys are not places where you can grow fruit.
Yeah.
It's caprock. It's salt water, salt air.
Yeah.
Fruit trees don't like that. In 40 years, with a pick and shovel, this guy chipped away at the rock and created an elaborate system of waterways, rain collection cisterns. He blasted with no permit. And he brought in soil from the mainland. By hand, he filled up 2.5 acres of land with soil. But it's where he gets the fruit that's the amazing part of this story.
Look at this.
Okay, so the fruit comes from all over the world. But he wanted rare fruit. He wanted a lychee. Now, lychees have been grown in the United States since the 1800s, but he didn't want one of those. In the 1950s, he snuck into China
Good.
in the 1950s.
Yeah.
He went to a Buddhist monastery and convinced a Buddhist monk to go into the palace, Forbidden Palace, and steal a piece of the lychee plant. That thing's growing on Big Pine Key right now. That's an amazing story just in itself.
Yeah.
I tell people it's like Raiders of the Lost Fruit.
Yeah. Can you wear a hat too?
he heard about a tribe in Peru that was growing a plant called the Nawaga sapote. Now, nobody knew what a Nawaga sapote is. An indigenous tribe in Peru was growing them. In the 60s, he traveled through the jungles of Peru at night because there's robbers and things on the trails. And he had a guide, and he met this tribe that doesn't speak English, and he didn't speak their language, and somehow he figured out a way to communicate with them and get seeds or pods or whatever he needed to plant.
Yeah.
He brings that back to Big Pine Key on his property, and he gets it to propagate and grow.
Yeah.
Now let's fast forward 50 years. Due to deforestation, every one of those plants has been cut down in Peru. That tribe is extinct. The only plants in existence are on 2.5 acres of land on Big Pine Key, Florida.
Is it in your book here?
It's in that book.
What was it called again?
It's the sapote, Nawaga.
Okay, white sapote.
Well, that's a white sapote,
Yeah.
but the Nawaga sapote is the special one that's actually on Big Pine Key.
I love, big right now, even though I do my own art, I still get a kick out of the adult coloring books. It's all the different designs. If you're tired of doing your own, you can sit there, maybe in front of the TV or something, and it's almost like you're meditating.
Yeah, I'm doing another one right now for the same people.
Okay.
And it's the flowers of the Florida Keys, because the flowers of the Keys are not indigenous.
Yeah.
When the pirates came to Key West, their wives, girlfriends, maybe themselves, they brought plants from all over the world. There are no indigenous flowers in that area of the United States before the pirates were there. In fact, they called Key West Bone Island when the Spaniards first got there.
Sure.
They found bones all over the island. It was like a place for burial. So it's called, the original name is Bone Island, Cayo Hueso,
Yeah. Yeah.
Key West.
Yeah.
That's where the name Key West comes from,
Yeah.
Cayo Hueso. An English-speaking person confused it with Key West, Cayo Hueso, and that's why it's called Key West. So the book is called Bone Island Blossom. So I'm working on that one, finishing it up this month.
Now these are, this one and the other one, Bone Island, that you're doing this is for adults too.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And while we're on it, Ralph, how can they get a hold of you and your books?
Well, they can find my books online. You can get them on Amazon. All you need to do is type in Ralph Masiello. You can find my books there. But I always suggest that you go to your local independent bookseller. If you have a local indie bookseller, I am always about getting the local people to buy the books at their local bookstore. There's lots of great bookstores throughout New England, throughout the world, and all you need is my name. Any bookstore can get my books.
How about Tatnook, right up here?
Tatnick's had my books. I used to go to the original Tatnick when it was a little tiny one.
Yeah, out in Worcester.
Not the bigger one, but the tiny one at the corner of Tatnick Square.
Yep.
I used to go to that one, and I did some of my first book signings there back in.
But you've been to the one up in Westboro?
Yeah.
That is, you can spend hours in there.
Yeah. I like the other one, but I like the one in Worcester because it was in the old cutlery building.
Yeah.
It was in the old where they made knives and stuff, and they had all the mechanical things, and it was all brickwork. I do love the one in Westboro, and I've done a lot of programs there. But there was something about that second building they went to.
You really like that one?
I like the brick and the duct work, and
they had cafes.
and they still have the cafe. They have the cafe in the new one too.
Now, here comes another one. He's got a whole pile of them in front of me.
I've got 20-something books.
Okay, now, unicorn drawing. This is big with the kids. Unicorns?
Yeah, oh my gosh, unicorns are crazy.
You can't get a swimming tube without it being a unicorn.
So I've been doing these how to draw books. Like I started visiting schools back in 1987, and kids always ask me how to draw things. And I was mentioning this to you earlier, that I'd be drawing something and kids would say, how do you draw that? And I was drawing these elaborate drawings for kids, and they couldn't draw them. So I started to come up with easier ways for them to draw bugs and dinosaurs using letters of the alphabet and shapes. And my publisher saw me doing this at schools, and they asked me if I could turn one into a book. So I did, and it sold so well, I've got a contract to do 20 different books, and this is the most recent one.
Look at the way he does this stuff.
The unicorn drawing book.
He starts off very easily, okay? And then he works his way up. Look at that. And then, eventually, I know a little girl in my family absolutely loved this. And she's 10. That's what it comes into, and it's pretty cool. I mean, everywhere.
I tell people it's like the way kids build with Lego.
Yeah.
You when you see a kid build a big contraption of Lego,
Yeah.
they come up to you and go, look what I built, and you think, wow, that's amazing. They've got all this stuff, but how did they do it? It was one little piece at a time, and they built on the previous little piece. And this is what how I feel about my drawing books. You start with a simple line, you add another simple line, and another simple line, and another, until you get something more complicated. And all my books start off with an easier one at the beginning,
Yeah.
and they get progressively more difficult throughout the book. So you have some challenge. It'll start off easier at the beginning.
Is this a real character?
The narwhal, that's the
Because he looks like
original.
a whale.
That's the original unicorn. A narwhal's the original
He's
unicorn.
the original dude, and he was real.
Oh yeah, and in fact, Vikings. And if you go down like 2-3 books there in my stack, there's a book called the Mystic Files Beast book. That thick book. There's stuff about the narwhal in there. That's a visual journal. So the narwhal, the Vikings would saw off narwhal tusks and sell them to European royalty as actual unicorn horns. And for about 500 years, they had the trade of unicorn horns. Nobody knew where the unicorns were coming from, but the Vikings were capturing narwhals, and they they probably eat the flesh and stuff, or do whatever they do with the whale body. But the horns, they grind them down as powdered unicorn or alicorn powder.
What about his weapons?
And I don't know about weapons, but I'm sure they did. But they had the royalty fooled, and it was worth 500 times the same weight in gold. So the Vikings pulled a fast one on the more Southern European royalty, and for 500 years they did that.
So when you were a kid, Ralph, were you? I don't know. My mother said as soon as I got a pencil in my hand, I was off and running drawing. Were you like that too?
I wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah, so did my son.
Well, so when I was a kid, I grew up in Boylston. When I was a kid, I loved to draw, but I never thought I was good at it, because every 2 weeks they'd have a woman come in and teach a class, but it was more a craft class, and you had to follow everything strictly by the patterns in her book. And I was the one kid that never wanted to have the accordion arms and legs leprechaun having the legs and arms where they were supposed to be according to her plan. So I glue legs to the forehead and arms to the chin.
She liked that.
And she'd tear them off and yell at me, and so I thought that's what art was. So I never wanted to be an artist. I like science, and I wanted to be a doctor.
So marine biology you majored in?
Yeah, and then I went to St. John's in Shrewsbury, and there was no art program at St. John's back when I was there in the 1970s. There was no art program. I did win the art contest every year, though. They had a literary and art contest every single year, and I won the contest every year.
St. John's, it's a good school, but it's very expensive, I think.
Back then, it was a little more reasonable than it is now. So my older brother, he went there first. So of course, me and my younger brother, we followed suit. But I love St. John's because I played sports.
Yeah, they're big on that.
I played sports, and that was my thing. And I never thought I was going to be an artist. I draw on my desk, or I draw on books and stuff. And my friends love my drawings, and I did win the contest every year. But I did it for the prize money. It was like $25 prize money. So like, I'll make it easy, $25. Nobody else is going to do it.
That's really great. Have you ever thought of putting some of these, we probably have, in pediatric offices?
They have been. Yeah, there's a lot of doctors that, especially the Icky Bug alphabet book, which was my first book.
Look at this, the Icky Bug.
Yeah, and in fact, that's it. I think it's Memorial School here in Upton. Okay, so I visited, and I've been to over 3,300 schools since 1987. And one of the earliest schools I visited was Memorial School, and I have a good story about Memorial School.
Go for it. Yeah, tell us.
Okay, so I've been to all these schools, and my dad passed away in '93. All right. Up to that point, I never thought my dad ever saw me do a public program with kids. And then a year after my dad died, my mother said, no, your dad saw you speak. He came down to Upton
He did.
and snuck in the back and asked the teachers if he could listen in
Yeah.
without disturbing me. So my dad, I never knew this while he was alive.
Yeah.
My dad, the only time my dad ever saw me speaking in public with kids
Yeah.
was at Memorial School.
What did your parents think of your artistic talent?
Well, it's funny because my dad owned a construction company,
Yeah.
and he never talked about art when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And when I went to school for marine biology and decided to, well, actually, let me preface this with, I was doing drawings of my dissections, not thinking it was art.
Yeah.
Somebody convinced me to take an art class,
Yeah.
and when I did, I loved it, and I started taking more. So I thought, I want to be an artist, and I want to get out of this science thing. And
Yeah.
marine biology was flooded at that time. There were no jobs. I knew I wasn't going to be able to get a job because everybody wanted to be Jacques Cousteau back then.
Yeah.
So there was going to be no job. So I thought, well, I'll just go home and work in construction.
Yeah.
So I told my dad, I just going to come home and work construction. So for 2 years,
Yeah.
I quit marine bio school and I worked out in the field digging ditches and stuff. And I had some knee surgery and I was laid up. My dad said, so, is this what you want to do? You want to be out on the steel in 20 below zero? You want to be out freezing in the winter? I'm like, not really. He goes, well, you should probably go back to college. So what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to go back to school, but I don't really want to tell you what I want to be.
Uh-oh.
And then finally he pulled it out of me. He said, well, you want to be an artist? He goes, that's what I wanted to do when I was a kid, but my parents couldn't afford to send me to college.
Your father said that.
My father was an unbelievable artist. I did not know this.
Yeah, back then the parents
And
probably
then-
were not in favor of that.
But what was amazing is once I told him this, he said, I want you to go to RISD, Rhode Island School of Design. I had no idea what RISD was. I'd never heard of it. It's the school he wanted to go to. I was afraid to apply there because it's the #1 ranked art school in the country. My dad filled out my application. My dad was the one that filled out my application to that school and forced me to go down there. And we drove it down
Sure.
together and submitted it, and I got in, and he was so happy. So he started painting and carving duck decoys. He became an amateur national champion duck decoy carver within like 5 years. The guy was unbelievably talented,
Yeah.
and he didn't really let on to it until I decided to go to art school.
Your
my-
father must have been young when he passed away.
65.
Wow, that's...
Yeah.
Is your mom still with you?
My mom is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does she think of your art?
She loves it. In fact, I'm dedicating the new book to her, the flower book to her.
We're talking with Ralph Masiello, and he's from Charlton. And he is an author and artist. He's got lots of these artist-type books for kids and for grown-ups, too, I have to say. Coloring book, the Unicorn Drawing Book, and the Fantastic Fruits. I mean, there's a bunch of them here. I mean, they're all fantastic. Which one are you going to leave in the Upton Library?
I'm going to give you the unicorn book.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you the Fantastic Fruits, even though that's a.
Okay.
And I will give you the Mystic Files Beast book for the older kids right there. The one that
Okay.
the visual journal book.
Okay. So when I'm done with them, I will, I could give them right downstairs, or you can go downstairs and yourself, just introduce yourself. I was upstairs. They all know the show. It's a dedicated local authors. It's terrific. Ralph, again, how can they reach you?
Again, my website is www.ralphmasiello.com. I'm actually updating it a little bit right now, so bear with me if you go to it now, because I'm going to have some downloadables up there pretty soon. There's going to be some videos, drawing demos. I do a lot of drawing demos, simple drawing demos. And then my email address is Ralph at ralphmasiello.com. So that's how you can connect with me. And if you want to get my books, you can go online. You could just do a Google search of my name. You're going to find me all over the place on the internet, for good or bad.
No.
There's a lot of pictures of me talking to kids with my mouth wide open. And
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Now, you started writing in what year was it? Drawing,
Okay, writing is different than drawing because I started illustrating in 1985.
Okay.
I didn't start writing my own books until 2000. And that's when I started doing my How to Draw book series.
Yeah.
I always liked to write, though.
Yeah.
I wrote in high school.
What do your kids think of you? They must think this is fantastic.
Well, my oldest daughter, she has a thing called Rett syndrome. She loves the pictures. She doesn't read, but
Yeah.
she loves the pictures and stuff. And when I draw. I make faces and voices when I'm drawing, so she cracks up about that.
Yeah.
My younger daughter loves my books, and you know, she's not super impressed, as any child may be with their parents. They're not super impressed by Jed. Oh, he's just an illustrator. But her friends, when they meet me, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had your book when I was in elementary school," and I say to my daughter, "See, I'm famous to them."
There you go. And Ralph was telling us a story that he actually, how many years ago were you up at the Upton, the Memorial
That
School?
was, it was probably in 90 or 1991.
Okay.
Yeah, and my dad passed away in 93.
In 93. So that's what he snuck into the Memorial School, and he saw.
Yeah, I had no idea my dad saw me.
Was it? Were you in a big auditorium?
I don't. It was like a big
Gym
area.
in there. Yeah, it's really nice up there. There's another school. I don't know what. When you think about your books, of course they can be for adults too. Is there any particular age group you want to zero in on, or is everybody?
Well, I kind of gear the alphabet books are geared towards younger kids, obviously, except for the Skull alphabet book, which is an older kids alphabet book. But the how to draw books range anywhere from preschool right up to adult.
Yeah.
And the coloring book, you know, some of the easier ones at the beginning, like the banana, they could be geared to younger kids. But then you get up to the longans and the lychees with the dragon. That's really detailed. So you get from simple to really detailed at the end.
I like this parrot one. Look at this. Oh, you can see the parrot. I hope you continue with these coloring books.
Oh, well, I'm planning on doing one on animal skulls.
Yeah.
I have a friend that helped me with the research for the Skull alphabet book for with Jerry Pilata, who's a pretty well-known author. So the Skull alphabet book, I get all the skulls from a company
That's
called...
big now, the skeleton look.
Yeah. Well, that book won the New York State Charlotte Award in 2004, best book, and all the kids in New York voted their favorite book that year.
Do you ever go? Have you ever been to the Rhode Island Authors Expo every year?
I've been.
You love it.
I've been to it.
It is wall to wall, different genres. It's packed. It's overwhelming, but so many of the authors I know love it.
The craziest one is when you go to like ALA, American Library Association, or American Booksellers Association, where we have lines of 200 people where you're signing books till your hand falls off.
Yeah, and it's you got to work for your everyone. I say,
Yeah.
Well, listen, Mel, you've got some more books coming up.
Yes, I do.
Let us know, and we'll get him back on again. Again, it's terrific. The drawing book, and Fantastic Fruits, and the Icky Bug alphabet book.
Yeah.
You know, how to draw, you can color. I wish you'd been around when I was little, because this would have been like heaven on earth.
I wish I was around when I was little.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate your time, and I hope everybody gets a chance to go take a look at the books and come into the library.
Yep, sure. We'll see you next time and be my guest.
Riding on a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.